Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jab Picks. The other half of the show, the Parlay, joining me in to break down some UFC Nashville. Let's get into it. We got 11 fights to break down here for UFC Nashville, headlined by Corey Sandhagen and Rob Font stepping in on short notice because Umar Nurmagomedov had to pull out. Font was supposed to fight on the August 19th card. He gets moved up here just a couple weeks. So he was training. He'll be ready for a 5-round bout here with Corey Sandhagen. We are coming off a red-hot card at UFC 291. The premium members, if you tailed both of us, you'd be up over 8 units. If you want to get it on that, you can go through the link in the description. But we're going to go through all these fights on the card, give you our predictions, but these are not our official bets. If you want those, you got to get them in the premium membership. But what do you think about the card?
There's some sneaky good fights on this card. It's such a bummer that we only get 11 fights coming off of a card where we only had 12, I believe. So a couple short, I guess, short cards. So I don't know. Some sneaky good fights, but overall, not really going to blow your socks off by any means. With the star power, I was really disappointed when Umar pulled out. So lost some fights. Still some chances to make money though.
Yeah, a lot of cancellations on this one. And like you said, some decent matchups. Good matchups overall. As far as like the matchmaking goes, it's not anything too lopsided. You're going to get a lot of playable lines as we'll go through them. You'll see that, but overall, you got the co-main event, Jessica Andrade, Tatiana Suarez, still undefeated, going down to 115 after she made a return back to 125. And that should be a good fight as well. But without any further ado, let's get into it. Starting with the main event, Corey Sandhagen coming in at minus 288 against Rob Font, sitting at plus 288. Over under 4.5 rounds, minus 155 for the over, plus 125 for the under. This is a catch weight of 140 because of the short notice for Rob Font. And it is 5 rounds. So Font was supposed to be in a 3-rounder, gets moved into 5 rounds, but he's usually got some pretty dang good cardio. He can go for days. Corey Sandhagen coming off the big win to Chito Vera. He's now 3-2 in his last 5. Same for Rob Font, 31 years of age for Corey Sandhagen. And at a slight reach disadvantage, although he is 3 inches taller than Rob Font. Coming into this one, Rob Font was supposed to be fighting Song Yadong, and that fight ultimately gets canceled because I believe Song was going to have to pull out of that, and Font was out of a fight, and then he gets put in here. So he's getting put into a spot with a big opportunity. Corey Sandhagen was the big underdog to Umar. Now he moves as a bigger favorite. What do you think about the matchup here?
Yeah, it's a pretty important fight for both these guys because it kind of determines where they go next in this top part of this division. For Corey, though, he's such like a I don't even know how to describe it when he gets in the zone and he's fighting his game and he's in that flow state, he seems unbeatable. I mean, we saw it in the last fight against Chito. He looked phenomenal the whole entire fight. There was a case he won that fight 4 rounds to 1. And we know what Chito's capable of, and we know what kind of fighter Chito is. So for Rob Font to come in here and beat Corey, that would be a massive statement for him. Kind of throw him right back into the mix. And this is kind of his last shot, too, I would say, with his age, being a little bit older and, kind of had to climb back up after some of his losses. Coming off the win to Adrian Yanez, and impressive win as an underdog for him. But that's the type of style that Rob's going to beat. Guys that will box with him, guys that are going to stand right in front of him and trade shots. That's the type of fighters Rob Font can have success over. Corey Sandhagen, on the other hand, is so with his movement, he's in and out, he's crafty, he's pretty unorthodox at times. He's harder to hit. His grappling has gotten really slick. I know he got submitted by Aljo in that first round a few years ago, but the guy's talented everywhere the fight is going to go. So I think Rob Font could struggle a little bit with finding the chin at times. I think Corey, if he fights like he did against Chito, he could cruise to a decision victory here as well. And I got to go with Corey. I don't necessarily know if he's worth minus 300. I think people are going to underestimate Rob a little bit, but I do think all around Corey's the better fighter, and I think he's going to be a little trickier to deal with than it will be for him to deal with Rob. So I got to go with Corey.
Yeah, it's going to be tough not to take Corey in this spot because the performance that he put on Cheeto Vera was like pretty eye-opening because he wasn't that big of a favorite against him. And he pretty much had the perfect game plan. Like, bank those first couple rounds with the wrestling. Don't let Cheeto get any looks on the feet, and then pretty much just stay safe for the rest of the fight and do what you need to do. He got a 50-45 from Sal D'Amato, 49-46 from Chris Lee. And don't let the split decision fool you. It was a clear win for Corey Sandhagen, but one of the judges gave it 48-47 for Cheeto. I was there in attendance, and it was kind of a boring fight because Corey just dominated. But for Rob Font, I think he'll be a little bit more active, especially early in the fight. He usually comes out, probably tries to set a pace with the boxing. He's going to have a great jab, great hands overall, and he can absorb a good amount of damage. He hasn't been knocked out in the UFC. I don't see him getting knocked out here against Corey Sandhagen, who's probably going to look to stay pretty in and out with the movement and just overall make Rob Font have to earn every strike that he's going to throw. So I think Corey Sandhagen gets it done, probably by decision, and just, fight's a smart fight. He's probably going to have the cardio advantage that he's, been training ready for 5 rounds. He's supposed to be taking on Umar. Like, that's a tough fight to prepare for.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wrestling's probably going to be a strong suit going into this one. He might use it offensively just because he's probably been training that a lot. And that's probably the path to least of resistance to beat Rob Font is to take him down. But it's not, the easiest to do. Rob Font, he doesn't have like the best takedown defense, 55%. But for the most part, the offense that he throws is going to be tough to get those entries on a takedown. So, yeah, if you're Corey Sandhagen, I think he probably gets it done by decision, unless he can just accumulate a lot of damage. Because we've seen Rob Font take a lot of damage, like that fight with Cheeto. He took a beating, but was still able to hold on for the whole 5 rounds. So, yeah, I like Corey this week.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about it is, like, you go and you look at who both these guys are fighting. They're all fighting really, really high-level guys. I mean, Corey beating Song Yadong, doctor stoppage. Song just showed against Ricky Simone that he's top level. I mean, he's one of the best fighters in this division. His striking is super, super good. And if Corey can do that kind of stuff to guys like Song Yadong, who are younger, faster, maybe a little bit more powerful, I think he's going to find success against Rob Font. I really do. And then, Rob, his losses, Jose Aldo, Cheeto, I mean, high-level guys. So, yeah, this is going to be kind of like an underrated, really, really high-level fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like it. I'm looking forward to it. Strawweight bout here. Jessica Andrade coming in at plus 260 against Tatiana Suarez, who sits at minus 360. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 145 for the over, minus 175 for the under. Tatiana Suarez still undefeated, and she made her return fight just a few months ago. And she got the submission win by guillotine. That was back at 125. She ultimately moves down to 115 because that's where she wants to get the belt at. Jessica Andrade, back-to-back losses. Not a good look for her. She got submitted by Erin Blanchfield. Can't blame her too much there. And then she gets knocked out in the first round by Yan Xiaonan. Coming in here against a pretty tough opponent. And it wasn't the original opponent. Tatiana Suarez was supposed to be taking on Verna Jandiroba, who's another really good grappler, but Jessica Andrade fills in for her. And I don't know if that's a great matchup for her, considering, she's wants to strike with girls, and Tatiana Suarez is one of the better, if not the best wrestler in the strawweight division. And that's going to be a tough matchup for Jessica Andrade. I know she bounces back between 115 and 125, but ultimately I think she's going to be undersized in this matchup. Like, Tatiana Suarez is a big 115er, and what she did in her last fight against Montana De La Rosa, who's a pretty big 125er, I don't want to say ragdolled her, but definitely controlled the wrestling exchanges and ultimately got the submission win. I kind of see you're doing the same thing here with Jessica Andrade. I don't think anything that Andrade is going to throw at her is going to like stun her to the point where she could get knocked out. It is women's MMA. But Tatiana Suarez has a pretty dang big head, and I don't think she's going to get knocked out here. I just see her eventually getting her to the ground and submitting her, if not ground and pounding her out. I feel very confident in Tatiana Suarez this week. If you watch any of her fights, like she's got wins over Alexa Grasso, the 125 champ, Carla Esparza, X 115 champ, and then went over Nina Nunes back when Nina Nunes was pretty dang good, and then takes the long layoff with the injuries, comes back and looks like she didn't miss a beat. I think she cruises through Jessica Andrade here and gets a win. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you know what's really weird? I was thinking as I was watching tape is like Jessica Andrade used to wrestle a lot in fights. She's like slowly gotten away from it as she's found, success with the hands and some power and stuff. I mean, you look back at her fights, she took Tisha Torres down 10 times, took Rose Namajunas down twice in the fight that she beat her. And there's some other fights. Caitlin Chukagian took her down 2 times. I mean, she used to wrestle so much more. And then is like the Valentina Shevchenko fight happened. She gets taken down 7 times in that fight. And then from there, she's kind of like abandoned ship with the wrestling and, goes on and gets dominated by Erin Blanchfield. Like if she didn't have that Blanchfield loss, I would be a little bit more confident taking her as a big underdog here. Like if she still showed that she can hang with these wrestlers. But I mean, she showed in that Blanchfield fight, she was lost on the ground with her. I mean, like a high level grappler like Blanchfield is going to have success against Andrade. And like you said, if Tatiana Suarez, like you said, is the best wrestler probably in this whole entire division in women's MMA. She's super strong, powerful. She's going to be a lot bigger than Andrade. So I see her having her way with it. I see her going for the takedowns right away. I don't think she's a type that's going to mess around on the feet with a girl like Andrade. I think she'll stick to her game plan and try to get this win because regardless of what Andrade has done in her last few fights or in the last couple of years even, a win over Jessica Andrade for a girl like Tatiana Suarez who's still trying to get this experience, like that's a good feather in your cap. It's a good name to have on your record in the win column, and it does a little bit for your career. So I don't think Tatiana messes around one bit. I think she comes out and tries to get this thing done, and I think she's successful too.
Yeah, it's just a different type of like wrestling that you would see from a female mixed martial artist. Like it's just so good, like so explosive on the entries, so strong in all the exchanges, and the submissions are there, and the hands on the feet are fast enough to where she's not like out of place, like where she could get caught. So yeah, I like her this week.
It's Henry Cejudo style wrestling, in my opinion. She's like the female Henry Cejudo.
She's damn good. Damn good. A light heavyweight bout. Dustin Jacoby coming in at plus 115 against Kennedy and Nzechkwu, sitting at minus 145. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 140 for the over, plus 110 for the under. The 35-year-old Dustin Jacoby, back-to-back losses for him. So he's on a 2-fight skid. And for Kennedy and Nzechkwu, he's on a 3-fight win streak. So a little bit of a difference in the trajectory of careers. 31 years old for Nzechkwu, 6'5". You see there, 83-inch reach. He's going to have a reach advantage over most guys that he fights, and he will definitely have that in this one. Seems like he's hitting his stride. Wins over Devin Clark, Iwan Kudalaba, Carl Roberson, all by finish, second and third rounds. He usually is a somewhat of a slow starter, and he'll somewhat get his reads or maybe just wait for you to slow down a little bit. But over the years, you just see the patience and the skills accumulate. As for Dustin Jacoby, 2-fight skid, close loss to Khalil Roundtree. That was controversial. And then the one last time out against Azamat Murzakanov, I thought he was going to win that fight. I think he was a slight favorite in that one. And just based off of he'd be the bigger guy, he has really good kickboxing. And I just felt like he could, stick to the outside, jab, leg kick, and he didn't do much of that. Kind of got caught, and I don't know, maybe lost some sort of confidence in his kickboxing after getting caught. Cardio didn't look good. Ultimately loses decision to Azamat Murzakanov, who stays undefeated. But in this one, coming in as the dog, I still don't like it though. I think Nzechkwu is he's just a lot bigger and he looks, I don't want to say more technical kickboxer, but he's just going to be a little step ahead, I think, in this one. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Dustin, if you watch this, I'm sorry. Um, I think it's a bad matchup for him too. We saw him in Kansas City, and I always pumped to watch him. He's from the same hometown as me. Everybody knows Dustin if you're from here or from a small town, and everybody there at Kansas City was rooting for him because that was as close to home as he's going to get fighting. A lot of his family, all of his friends, everybody was there, and it seemed like that was a little pressure for him or something because he did not look like the same Dustin Jacoby that we normally see inside the octagon. And now we're at UFC Nashville, which is like just as far away from our hometown as Kansas City is, just opposite ways. So it's going to be the same thing. All of his family, all of his friends. It's a lot of pressure to go out there and perform and get a big, finish and stuff like that over a dangerous and good fighter like Nzechkwu. So I think you mentioned it right on when you opened up this fight with their career trajectories. Obviously, Kennedy's looked really good. Gotten finishes in his last 3 fights, 2 knockouts, a submission against decent guys. Especially Kudalaba, who's tough, and he's going to come out there and try to grind you down and take you down. Is he able to find the knockout there? Then he subs Devin Clark, who, Devin Clark's the guy who's tough, gritty, and durable too at times. So Dustin Jacoby, on the other hand, loses Khalil Roundtree, which was a good fight. I thought he fought well enough to win, but he was point fighting there. And then he goes out and tries to do that with Azamat Murzakanov and gets dropped, gets hurt a couple of times, almost put out, and then, comes back towards the end, but just had nothing in the gas tank left and just didn't really perform well at all. So these guys are going opposite ways. And, Jacoby's usually a pretty big dude at 205. I think people will be surprised at how big Kennedy is in there. I mean, the dude's 6'5", he's thick. He's going to be hard to connect with and put out. And if Dustin can't do that, if Azamat Murzakanov was hurting him, I could see Kennedy putting some shots on him that do some damage as well here too. So at this point in Dustin's career, this is a really tough fight in my opinion. I think Kennedy and Nzechkwu probably gets it done. I'm going to be rooting for Dustin Jacoby with everything I got. But yeah, I'm going to pick Kennedy here. I hope it doesn't bite me in the ass too.
Yeah, I just think it's a very tough matchup for him. I kind of like the price because I think he should be around that, if not maybe like minus 160. But Dustin Jacoby, he could definitely pull it off, like with a good game plan. And if you catch Kennedy on like a bad day, or if he just starts to fight outside of what his coaching is telling him, because I think that's been a big upside for him as of recently. Like it seems like he's listening to his coaches very well throughout the fight and goes in with a good game plan. But if he doesn't, then Dustin's definitely a live dog.
Dustin's got to get the leg kicks going.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the number one thing. Whole fight.
Featherweight bout here. Diego Lopes coming in at minus 130. Gavin Tucker sitting at even money. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 110 for the over, minus 120 for the under. Diego Lopes is he got somewhat of the hype train behind him based off his last performance in his UFC debut against Boser Evloev on short notice on a pay-per-view card against the undefeated Boser. Nearly submitted him multiple times. The jiu-jitsu was on point, but not on point enough to get the sub. But, you kind of look at him and he's kind of got a funny haircut. Everyone makes fun of him for it. But at the end of the day, the guy's got some skills. He's a fun fighter to watch. And Gavin Tucker being 37 years of age here, he's coming back after a bit of a layoff. His last fight was against Dan Ige, and he got knocked out in 22 seconds, and that was over 2 years ago. So kind of weird that he's coming back after that. I don't know what the career trajectory is looking like for him. He's 4-2 in the UFC. It's not like he's some scrub. He's got a win over Billy Q, who we'll talk about later. That was back in 2020. And he was scheduled to fight Pat Sabatini twice, and he withdrew twice. That was back in 2021 and 2022. Now he's getting Diego Lopes. He's coming in as a slight dog. What are you thinking on this one?
Diego Lopes is such a fan favorite, and I understand it. Like he fights a fun fight when he's out there. He's pretty decent on the feet. He throws hard, and off his back, he's always fishing for submissions. Almost had Evloev a couple of times there with the knee bar and then the triangle and everything in the first round. And I mean, you look at his 2 fights, one under Dana White's Contender Series, one under the UFC banner, and both against savages. Masvar, undefeated, a really good fighter. Joanderson Britu, another dude who's looking really good in the UFC so far. But the one thing in each of those fights is he was taken down over 3 times, which is concerning against Gavin Tucker, because Tucker has good takedowns and he's strong and is decent with his control. But being 37 years old now for Tucker, 2-year layoff, coming off of a nasty knockout to Dan Ige where you were completely flatlined, it makes me really, really like the younger fighter here, which is Diego Lopes, and especially a guy who's dangerous anywhere this fight goes, on the feet, off his back, on top. I mean, the grappling and the jiu-jitsu game of Diego Lopes is really, really good. You can just tell. But the one thing I do worry about, I'm going to take him for my pick here, Diego Lopes. But the one thing I do worry about is if he gets taken down, he gets too comfortable off of his back, because he does love to fish those triangles and arm bars and everything. And sometimes that looks bad to the judges. If it goes to decision, he's lost 2 decisions in a row. It does go to decision, and Gavin Tucker's the one on top for most of the fight. He's probably going to lose again, but I could see him finding a finish here against a Gavin Tucker who is older. Like I said, layoff, coming off big knockout, and everything, in my opinion, points to Diego to be able to get this thing done, get his first win under the UFC banner, because he's a good fighter. You can tell he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's I'm going to take him too, but I'm concerned about the same thing pretty much that you just said. Like, he's got 36% takedown defense. A lot of that comes down to just the confidence that he has in his jiu-jitsu. But at the end of the day, if you don't get the submissions, like, judges really aren't rewarding the submission attempts that much, especially, if it's only like, let's think about a submission attempt. If you have a submission attempt in and it doesn't happen, like, it doesn't come to fruition, like, it's probably 5, 10, maybe 15 seconds of you going for it out of a 5-minute round. Judges just aren't really gonna reward that much. So I don't know. Maybe you look at like a Lopes by sub line, because Gavin Tucker does love those takedowns. He's never been submitted, so that's kind of the big worry here. Is that he could just stay safe, stay on top and just do work there. But that's a tough thing to do. If you ask, Movsar Evloev, like, he was not having a fun night in there, trying to do work from top position. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Diego Lopes, but fun fighter to watch, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope he can pull off a sub, because he's had two tough matchups, Britu and Evloev. Britu on the Contender Series, but yeah, I hope he gets a win. Light heavyweight bout here. Tanner Boser coming in at -165 against Alexa Camur, sitting at +135. Over under 2.5 rounds, -156 for the over, +126 for the under. 1-4 in his last 5 for Tanner Boser, and this is be his second fight in the light heavyweight division. We saw his light heavyweight debut at UFC Kansas City, and he got ground and pounded out in the first round by Iwan Kutalaba. And it's coming into this one as the favorite. It's 1-4 in his last 5. It's only win in his last 5 is Owen St. Preux. And Alexa Camur, like, this is a greasy light heavyweight fight. Like, you're taking Tanner Boser or you're taking Alexa Camur, who hasn't fought in 2 years, but he is younger. So I would hope that he's been working on his skills to, come back and make a run. He's 1-2 in the UFC, back-to-back losses in the UFC to William Knight and Nikolay Negumereanu by split. So I really hope he's been working on his skills and just been in the gym grinding. But if he comes in here and he looks, flat, or like he hasn't improved much, it's probably going to get cut. I mean, that might be why he's fighting, because they want to, see if he can stay here or not. Same with Tanner Boser. I think the loser probably gets cut. And this is just as greasy as it gets. Like, probably not something you want to get too invested in, but what side you lean in?
Yeah, for Tanner Boser, it almost feels like he's lost a little bit. Like, he doesn't know where he belongs, which division. Thought he was going to come down to 205. He had the abs. He was looking good and lean, and he comes in and he just gets smoked and bulldozed by Ion Kutalaba. So it's hard to tell what Boser's going to look like. Like, I wish we would have seen more in that Ion fight to be able to tell, like, what type of fighter he's going to be at 205, where his strength's going to be, his weaknesses type of thing. Because you're getting Alexa too, who's kind of, he lost to William Knight, but that, to be fair, that was like a William Knight who had a game plan and wanted to use the wrestling and really stuck with it the whole fight. Got 4 takedowns on him and, ended up winning. But the Nikolai Negumereanu fight, it's not a terrible loss if you look at Nikolai's record. Like, yeah, he just got knocked out by Carlos Ulberg, but was on a 4-fight winning streak before that. Beat Ior Potiera, who's a pretty dangerous guy, and beat I believe he beat Kennedy and Nzechkwu as well. But regardless, Alexa Camur in there outstruck him by like almost 31 shots in that fight. So it's not like he got blown out by Nikolai. He hung with him. He showed he's really tough. The William Knight fight obviously lost, but it's just hard to tell with him as well. And he is younger. I like that for him here against Boser. I do like the fact on his side that Boser showed that he can get kind of bullied around at 205. He's not going to be this heavyweight coming down bullying dudes in there. So as far as betting goes, I don't think I'm confident on either guy to throw anything down. But for the pick, I am going to take Alexa Camur.
Yeah, I'm going to go the same way, too. I think it's just a dog or pass at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Tanner Boser's been on the do not bet list for a while for me. And I look at Alexa Camur like there's at least something you can get behind. Like, he's coming back here, new and improved. And if you look at his fights in the UFC, like, where he struggles is when he's on his back and he's getting taken down and he can't, use his hands. I don't think Tanner Boser's going to go for that in this one, considering that's where he's also been losing fights. So probably going to be a stand-up battle. And I think Alexa Camur probably got a better volume, a little bit more explosive, younger, and I'll take him for the pick. But yeah, probably not one you want to get too invested in. Lightweight bout, Ludovic Klein coming in at plus 170 against Ignacio Bahamondes, sitting at minus 210, over under 2.5 rounds, minus 145 for the over, plus 115 for the under. 25 years of age for Ignacio, 28 years of age for Ludovic Klein. 2-2-1 in his last 5 for Ludovic, and 4-1 for Ignacio Bahamondes. He has looked pretty darn good in the UFC. He's only lost to John Makdessi a while ago, but he's gotten couple finish wins, one highlight spinning wheel kick, and a submission. And then his last time out, he got a win by decision to Trey Ogden. Ludovic Klein coming off the draw to Jai Herbert in a fight that if he didn't get the point, or if Jai didn't get the point deducted, he probably would have lost. And he's going to be significantly undersized in this one. Like Ludovic, 5'7", Ignacio, 6'3". And you can even tell in the last fight against Jai Herbert, like Ludovic was a 145er when he came into the UFC. Ultimately, he decided to move it to 155, and he's getting one of the bigger 155ers here in Ignacio Bahamondes. I will say, Ludovic is definitely filling into 155. Like, the guy is jacked and shredded for a 5'7" guy. It's pretty good kickboxing, but if you look at like the stats, just fairly low volume. I mean, he has a negative strike differential in his career in the UFC. He hits pretty hard, but it just hasn't looked like it's fully came together, especially when he's fighting guys like a Devontae Smith, who's longer, a Jai Herbert, who's longer, and just struggles to find the range against these longer type guys. Ignacio, super long, and he's got pretty good takedown defense, 95% to be exact. He's only been taken out once in the UFC. I would probably favor him. I think he's definitely worth the minus 210 in this one. The only way I see him losing is if he comes out with like a shitty game plan and like he just can't stuff wrestling or something. But he's shown that he's been pretty good to stuff takedowns. I think he just sits at range and picks them apart. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I feel the same way as you. And for Bahamondes, like, if he wasn't such a good striker, I would be a little bit more confident in Klein here. But the fact that there's such a big size difference here is going to make it super hard for Ludovic Klein to implement that striking game plan, in my opinion, just because of how good Bahamondes is and all the volume he throws too. Like, it's going to be hard for Klein to really set stuff up, in my opinion. And like you said, Klein's got the negative strike differential, and that's not going to look good against the guy in Bahamondes who does throw a lot of volume. A guy who averages damn near 8 significant strikes per minute. And he has, a decent sample size so far, 4 fights in the UFC, 5, I guess, if you count Contender Series, which they count those stats against. So, he's got 5 fights where he averages that many significant strikes per minute. That's concerning to me for Ludovic Klein. Being 5'7", fighting a dude who's 6'3", a guy who kicks well in Bahamondes. I mean, everything's pointing towards him. I'm surprised he's not a little bit bigger of a favorite, if I'm being honest. I just don't see where Ludovic gets this win unless it's some flash knockdown into ground and pound, or he just clips him just right to put him out. Because I think this fight could go all 3, and you're going to see Bahamondes have a lot of success, especially with Klein coming off the fight to Jai Herbert. Jai's a longer fighter, good kickboxer, uses his kicks pretty well to the body and legs. But you're going to get that, a 6'3" version with a ton more volume than Jai, because Jai's a low level dude, or low volume dude. Right. And Jai beat Ludovic Klein. If he didn't get a point taken in that last round, Jai wins the fight. So yeah, I think this is Ignacio Bahamondes all day. I think we're going to see a clinic on the feet just because that reach and length.
Yeah, and even in the fight that for Klein against Jai Herbert, like, he got him down in round 1. And then he got like elbowed in the face, started bleeding, and then he was like, "All right, I can't do that anymore." Like, Jai is just too active off his back to take him down. And at that point, he was just kind of screwed. So, yeah, I like Ludovic Klein, but in this spot, it's just a terrible matchup. Like, for Bahamondes, who has shown he is very willing to take the game plan of chip away at you at range and find the spots, be patient. If he does that in this one, I think he cruises to a win. A featherweight bout, Billy Q coming in at -170 against Damon Jackson, who sits at +140. Over under 2.5 rounds, -125 for the over, -105 for the under. Damon Jackson coming off the knockout loss to Dan Ige, and Billy Q coming off the knockout loss to Edson Barbosa. So a couple of guys that are looking to get back on track. Both men 34 years of age. 2-3 in his last 5 for Billy Q. 4-1 in his last 5 for Damon Jackson. He was on quite the run until he got knocked out. Coming in here as a dog to Billy Q. Who you liking?
I like Billy Q here. I know he got he got knocked out when we were there in Kansas City by Edson Barbosa. Crazy knee that just caught him just right, out cold. But in his past fights, he's shown that he is such a tough dude. Like, he can take damage from dudes and fight through it and not lose his volume, even when he is getting touched up sometimes, because his volume is tremendous as well. He throws and lands almost 8 significant strikes per minute. He'll mix in some takedowns from time to time, good wrestling, good submission game, which is kind of the same as Damon Jackson minus the volume. Like, Damon Jackson doesn't throw all the volume that Billy Q will, but he does have good wrestling, good takedowns, and a pretty high submission average at 1.8. So we've seen him find subs before. Both guys' takedown defense is under 50%, which is interesting. If this fight does turn into a grappling match and we see a lot of wrestling, it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be able to implement and find the takedowns first, I guess. But if Billy Q is smart, in my opinion, he doesn't even try to mess with going for takedowns. I think he uses his defensive wrestling to try to keep this thing on the feet and just use the volume and pressure that he normally does. And I think he'll do just fine here. I think that pressure breaks people. Damon Jackson coming out and getting knocked out in his last fight. I think if Billy Q just stays on the gas, he's going to wear him down, and I think he could find a late finish.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same. Like, if you're Billy Q, you're clearly going to outpoint him. Like, he averages 7.86 strikes per minute. Damon Jackson, 2.78. He's more of a 1 or 2 punch at a time type guy. Going to look for the right shot to land and probably look for a takedown. For Billy Q, it's kind of like a barrage of punches. And in this one, if it does go to the ground, I think Billy Q's got enough skills to not get subbed. He's never been subbed. And just the activity that he throws at you is tough to handle for Damon Jackson. The way he's been winning fights is to get you down, control you, or submit you. So in this one, I think he won't be able to do that, or at least it'll be really tough for him to do that. So I got to go Billy Q as well. Bantamweight bout, Kyler Phillips coming back to action, sitting at -190 against Raoni Barcelos, who sits at +160. Over under 2.5 rounds, the over, -185. The under, +155. 36 years of age for Raoni Barcelos. Filling in on short notice because Kyler Phillips was supposed to take on Saeed Nurmagomedov. Pulls out. Barcelos steps in. He's 2-3 in his last 5. Phillips been off for a while. 4-1 in his last 5. There was talks that he was like got cut from the UFC or he was a free agent or whatever, but turns out he's not, and he's coming in here as a favorite. He hasn't fought since February of 2022, so he's been off for about a little less than a year and a half. And talented guy for sure, 28 years of age. He's gonna have a 5-inch reach advantage in this one, coming in as a favorite. Who you liking in this one?
Yeah, I do like Kyler Phillips here because of the age factor and the not activity as far as fighting so much, but in the octagon, he does throw good volume. Both guys throw decent volume, but Kyler's just a little more. I don't know. He looks better in my opinion than Raoni will on the feet. And Raoni, being at this age, he's 1-3 in his last 4. He's either winning by decision, he's losing by decision. I guess knockout by Umar in his last fight, which is also a little bit concerning coming off of a fight like that. But at this age, against a young dude like Kyler Phillips, who is pretty explosive, he will get takedowns, he will control you, land a little ground and pound here and there. I know Raoni does have a super high takedown defense, but I think Kyler should have enough success to pull this thing off. The one thing that does scare me is that we've seen Kyler kind of fade as fights goes on because he is trying to get all these takedowns, and if it doesn't happen, he can get himself into trouble. And like I said, man, Raoni's got this 93% takedown defense over, a pretty decent amount of UFC fights, and he's fought a lot of pretty decent competition. So I do think Kyler wins. I'm going to pick Kyler. But as far as betting goes, I'm going to be watching after the first round. Like if Kyler comes out here, uses a lot of energy, gets a couple takedowns, throws a lot of shots on the feet, and it was clearly his fight, I think you can get Raoni Barcelos in the second round at a pretty big number, and it might be worth taking a flyer on because, like I said, Kyler could gas. He could get a little tired as this fight goes on. Barcelos has enough experience, has been in there with guys like this to where he could maybe weather the storm and start taking over as it goes on. So, interesting fight. I'm picking Kyler to win, but like I said, I'm going to watch that live bet.
Yeah, it's a interesting fight. Both guys have lost to Victor Henry, so that's something. But at the same time, look at Kyler Phillips. It's kind of that forgotten guy just because he hasn't been inactive. Like he was looked at as a really solid prospect coming up, and it's going to crack the rankings. I mean, beat Song Yadong back in 2021. That win ages pretty dang well. That was on the Blachowicz Adesanya card for anyone that remembers that. But he had the loss to Holly Paiva and pretty much lost how you just said. Like he had a great first round and then kind of gassed out. And the next 2 rounds he lost. Some people gave him a 10-8 in the first round. Ultimately loses. And I think he took that fight as like a big learning lesson. Came back in the next fight and got a round 3 finish by a triangle armbar. So I look at that as like, all right, he kind of knows that if he goes all in the first round, he can gas out and maybe just fought that a little bit more smart. But then he's been off for, over a year again. Barcelos, he's been in there a lot. He's been pretty active. The knockout loss, don't really like that, but he's been off for, 6 months. So I will say that's probably enough time to recover from that. He was supposed to fight Miles Johns just a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, actually. That fight got canceled, so he's stepping in here. I think Kyler Phillips gets it done. Barcelos, probably a little bit past his prime, but a live dog for sure if he comes in with the right game plan and he just stays in it and just, he's a dog and grinds it out. He's definitely got a chance, but I think Phillips is the rightful favorite in this one. I'll take him. Welterweight bout, Jeremiah Wells sitting at -155 against Carlston Harris, who comes in at +125, over under 2.5 rounds, +120 for the over, -150 for the under. Both men, 36 years of age, and they've had a pretty dang good run. I mean, 5-0 for Jeremiah Wells in his last 5, 4-1 for Carlston Harris, the only loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov. And Jeremiah Wells was in a very interesting fight his last time out against Selmsberger, gets the split decision win. He got knocked down, I believe, 3 times in that one, but ultimately got a takedown almost immediately after that and got the win, basically for control time. He got 11 minutes of control time. A lot of his game plan is, huck bombs, and then if that fails, go to the wrestling or go to the submission game that he has. He's got a pretty good jiu-jitsu base. Carlston Harris, his last time out, I mean, he was a pretty sizable favorite against Jared Gooden, and Jared Gooden took that fight on short notice. He goes in there, and the striking was like super weird. Doesn't seem natural to him. He has a pretty good size for 170, pretty good reach, 76-inch reach for 170. And he doesn't really use it. Like he kind of has like a bent arm when he throws his punches, and he doesn't use his length very well. In this one, I think he needs to use his length. He needs to use his kicks very well as well, because Jeremiah Wells got big power. And if you get into that range where he can clip you, if he hits you, you're probably going to go down. Carlston Harris, I think he probably needs to stay to the outside, use his kicks. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that because he just hasn't really shown much of that in the UFC. He's got power in his hands for sure. But at the same time, the grappling he showed against Jared Gooden wasn't, I mean, it was effective, but it wasn't like that great because Jared Gooden is like not some great grappler, doesn't have very good takedown defense. Carlston Harris was able to take him down, not finish him. In this one against Jeremiah Wells, I just don't see where he has like a big upper hand in any spot. I think Jeremiah Wells should be able to get this one done. Could knock him out, but at the same time, he just showed his last fight. He can grind out a win if he needs to. I like that in a fighter, so I'm going to take him. What do you got?
Yeah, I like that like scrappy dog that Jeremiah Wells, has in him, because he was hurt bad against Semelsberger in his last fight in that first round. I mean, when he dropped, it almost looked like he was going to go out for a minute, and ended up surviving, gets the takedown, and does what he has to do to just win the fight. And that was super impressive, regardless of how that ages now that Semelsberger just got knocked out in round 3 this past weekend. Jeremiah Wells is a guy, though, he is older. He's not a young guy that I guess you would be worried about like the experience factor and stuff like that. Like he's 36 years old. He's got 15 fights professionally now. He's not like green at this anymore. He's seen a lot of different styles. Carlston Harris, like you mentioned, the striking did look super weird in his last fight. Like you can tell the dude's athletic and probably has some really good power if he, is a little bit more technical with striking, but he's just not. And he has good wrestling as well. Both guys, good wrestling. Both guys, decent takedown defense. Carlston Harris only at 75%, where Jeremiah Wells, I don't think, has ever been taken down in the UFC or, in the last 4 fights in the UFC. So I think Jeremiah Wells has an advantage here as well. I do like the power on the feet. Carlston Harris, like I said, he's athletic. He's not going to be super easy, and he's not going to sit right in front of you with no head movement to where you can hit him like that. But Wells, he throws wild, man. He catches people, and when he hits you, it's pretty devastating. And he is relentless, too, with the grappling and wrestling. And I think that style could wear down a guy like Carlston Harris. And I'm going to pick Wells here for my pick as well.
I like it. Flyweight bout here. Jake Hadley coming in at -170 against Cody Durden. Back in action, sitting at +140. Over under 2.5 rounds. -125 for the over. -105 for the under. Both men 5'7", 70-inch reach for Jake Hadley. 6 years younger than Cody Durden. Both men 4-1 in their last 5. Jake Hadley 10-1 in his career, and the Englishman had a quick finish his last time out, and that was on the London card back in March. Got the knockout win to Malcolm Gordon, hit him with a nice hook to the body and put him out. I mean, 1 minute and 1 second in that one. Before that, he fought Candelario and submitted him. He's got good submission skills. He's got good hands on the feet. In this one, he's probably going to have to use all of that because Cody Durden's probably going to look to take him down. And the submission skills are going to probably come in handy because he's been submitted 3 times, Cody Durden has. But on the feet, I think Hadley's got much better hands. You look at the last fight with Cody Durden against Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson was just getting taken down over and over, rinse and repeat. 11 takedowns for Cody Durden and 9 minutes and 33 seconds of control time. If Jake Hadley's not ready for that, it's probably going to be a long night for him. But I would assume if he takes this fight, he knows that's coming. It's going to be an interesting fight. I mean, flyweights are always a little bit more room for variation as far as, you know, what can happen. But what are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, I like things on both sides here. Jake Hadley, I mentioned before the show when we were talking, like his striking is super crisp and clean, but he's always throwing something, whether it's, you know, combinations upstairs followed by a body kick or leg kick. Like he's always throwing something, and it looks good to the judges. And we've seen him be taken down before. Like his takedown defense is lacking a little bit, and it concerns me against a guy like Cody Durden, who's kind of relentless with the wrestling. We saw it against Charles Johnson. Like he wouldn't let Charles Johnson breathe. And that's the exact style of fight he's got to fight to beat a guy like Jake Hadley. I just don't know if he's going to have much success if he's not, you know, on top, controlling him the whole time, because Hadley's shown he can get submissions off his back. He's dangerous there as well. But at plus money, man, Cody Durden's super interesting. Like I took him against Charles Johnson. Maybe I'm just a little biased now because he's made us some money. He looked really good against Charles Johnson and showed that he is that relentless style. And it's hard to bet against guys like that. But Hadley's going to be a little better than Johnson, better on the feet, craftier on the feet and technical at the same time. A dude who's more dangerous off of his back than Johnson. So I do think it ends up being a pretty close fight. But, you know, I like the guy who will be able to just swipe up control time if he can. You look at the Allen Nascimento fight with Jake Hadley, 3-round fight. Jake Hadley was able to throw and land 8 strikes the whole fight just because Nascimento got 2 takedowns, did his thing with them, and was able to just win a unanimous decision. I could see the fight going similar to that if Cody Durden is on his game. So I'm going to pick him as the dog here.
Yeah, that's the thing that scares me the most about taking a Jake Hadley is the fight with Allen Nascimento. It's like there's the blueprint for Cody Durden to get a win here. I mean, he just couldn't get off his back. Allen Nascimento was beating him at every position and just pretty much dominating him on the ground. But then you look at like Hadley has submission skills. Maybe he's just not great. I mean, Allen Nascimento is pretty dang good grappler. So it's not like the worst thing to look at.
Yeah.
I don't think Durden has the type of submission game that Nascimento has, or at least the jiu-jitsu. He's got a little bit better wrestling base. Maybe he can, you know, rinse and repeat takedowns like that. But if he can't, like, I think he's not going to go well for him. I think the hands are just a little bit too much for Hadley. So I like Hadley to win. I don't like the price, though. I mean, Cody Durden's a dog, too. Don't really like, you know, going against guys that are plus money and just have a great, you know, type of grinding style type of fighter. So I'll go with Hadley for the pick, but I don't love the price. Another flyweight fight here. Ode Osbourne coming in at plus 140 against the debuting Asu Almabaev, sitting at minus 170. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 127 for the over, minus 103 for the under. And Ode Osbourne coming in 3-2 in his last 5. The Almabaev 5-0 in his last 5. It's on quite the win streak. But coming into this one in his debuting fight against Ode Osbourne, who, I mean, he's come through as a dog before. He's lost as a favorite before. It's kind of just very unpredictable type of fighter. I mean, even just watching him fight, he's got a lot of quick twitch when he's on the feet, very fast with the hands, very fast with the kicks, flying knees, all that type of stuff. And this one against Almabaev, in his last, you know, few fights, it's pretty clear what he wants to do. He wants to take you down, sit in your guard, and rack up control time. And this one against Ode, it's going to be tough to do just based off of the explosion that he has. But if you're Ode, I mean, what's the game plan here? You don't want to open up too much because you don't want to get taken down. But at the same time, that's like your strength. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But who are you thinking takes the win?
Yeah, it's a really close fight in my opinion, and still some unknowns with Almabaev because I mean we've seen highlights of him. I've watched some tape on him, but he's fighting regional scene guys. He's not fighting UFC caliber guys yet. I mean, his last fight was against a dude who was 3-1. So I mean, it's hard to tell like how good he actually is when he's fighting some of these guys, and that's the tape you have to go off of. Whereas we know Ode can get knocked out. He can finish dudes as well. He has some knockouts on his record. He's crafty. He's flashy. He'll throw flying knees and weird attacks and stuff. The one thing I do like on Ode is how athletic he is. Like he might get taken down, but he's so squirmy and he's so long and lengthy too, where it's going to be hard to hold him down. I think for Almabaev at least. And on the feet, Ode's powerful. He's got some snap on his shots too. So maybe this is a fight where Almabaev comes in and just shows, okay, maybe he wasn't quite ready for the UFC because Ode will be a tough test for most people. I know he just got knocked out by Tyson Nam 2 fights ago. And he's been knocked out by Manel Kopp, but those are dudes that, crack, like notoriously have a lot of knockouts on the record and have heavy, heavy hands. So if it stays on the feet, I'm going to favor Ode Osbourne here. If it goes to the ground, Almabaev, if he is all that he's cracked up to be, should be pretty tough for Ode to win this fight if he's getting taken down over and over. But we'll see how the first fight jitters are. If this dude has an adrenaline dump and gets a little tired as the fight goes on, maybe Ode can take over. But I did not like Ode's energy in that last round against Charles Johnson by any means. He did end up winning the fight, but he definitely slowed down. You could tell he was pretty tired in that one. So, and not to mention, like Ode's not a terrible wrestler by any means himself. So we'll see what happens here. I think for the pick, I think I got to go Ode. I just got to stick with the dude who has UFC experience, a UFC vet, against a guy making his debut that, we've seen some film, but we don't exactly know a ton about him yet at this UFC level. So I'm not big on taking UFC debuters, so I'm going to stick with Ode Osbourne, especially at plus money.
Yeah, that's probably the way I'd have to lean. Just for everything that you just said. Doesn't seem like Almabaev, like if you watch film on it, doesn't jump off the page to be like, okay, this guy's a killer. And Ode been in there with a lot of guys. I mean, Manel Kopp being one of them, and veterans like Brian Kelleher. I mean, he's been in there with a lot of guys. He's been training with Aljo too. I mean, he moved to Vegas not too long ago to start training out there with better guys in the UFC, and I just saw him with Aljo at the watch party for UFC 291. So if you're training with those guys and like Marab, I think you can handle the wrestling of a debuting Almabaev. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Ode Osbourne at plus money. I think it's the play here. I mean, maybe if you see better film on Almabaev and be like, all right, this guy, he's not going to get knocked out. He's not going to get reversed by a guy like Ode, then sure. But I don't know. I just haven't seen enough from what I've watched to really get behind Almabaev as a favorite in this one. So yeah, I'm going to go with Ode as well as the underdog. And that's it for UFC Nashville. 11 fights. Those are the picks, not the bets. If you want the bets, jump in the link in the description and join the Double Leg Premium so we can chat with you guys in the Discord and stay hot with the picks coming off a big weekend last week. UFC 291, looking to keep it going this week. But any more thoughts on the card before we sign it out?
Some more spots to make some more money.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. UFC Nashville, another later start in the day. So we had that early start at UFC London. I was loving it. And then just those long Saturdays, you got to wait for it. It is what it is. I'm not going to complain too much, but thank you guys for the support. If you want to stay up to date with all the Double Leg updates, go check it out on the medias at the Double Leg. If you want to stay up to date with me on the socials at HeyJaiPicks, where can they find you?
On all social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Make sure to drop a subscription if you're watching here on YouTube. But until then, we'll see you in the UFC Nashville recap. The Double Leg signing out.